Risk, I'll be honest with you, is a code word for statistics. And we're going to have a demonstration here about statistics and risk, and we're going to relate it to investments. Hopefully that'll make it a little more applicable to your life and kind of give some context for all this stuff. Now, risk in investments, risk in finance. Risk is something other than the expected. If you don't know what to expect, that's risk. If you do know what to expect in the future, then there is no risk because you can plan, make plans for it, and take care of it that way. So risk is something other than the expected. Statistically, what do you expect in the next time period now? Well, what you expect in the next time period is the mean of the distribution today. So if you get anything other than the mean of the distribution today in the future, then statistically, that's risk. Now, in business and finance and investments now, a couple of axioms here you need to understand. The price of greater return is always greater risk. You can't get more return unless you take on more risk. If you can find more return for less risk, what should you do? You should take it, okay? But practically speaking, you can't get more return unless you take on additional risk. In statistics and in investments now, there's something called the rational investor concept, invented by a guy named William Sharp. Now, a rational investor in investments and in finance, that's someone who wants the most return for the least amount of risk. And indeed, all of us would look for that. We all want to be rational investors. We all want more return for less risk. Sometimes that's difficult to find, but that's what we like. Now, what you see up on the board here, very simple demonstration of risk and return and how we look at risk and return in business and in investments. What you see here, this kind of curvy line here, it would be a plot of returns of some asset. It could be any asset, but it's the returns of the asset. This straight line that you see running through all those curvy lines, this is the mean of the distribution. In this case, the mean of the distribution is 9%. So at any point in time, the return that you expect is the mean of the distribution. So when we are at this point in time, what you expect in the next time period is a 9% return. Note that you actually got a return up here somewhere. You actually got more return than you expected. Is that a bad thing? No. But statistically, though, that's risk. In this shaded area you see above the mean line, these are referred to as positive deviations. In that shaded area there, all the shaded area, the observation is greater than the mean. Those are positive deviations. At this point in time, right here, we expected a 9% return in the next time period, and we actually got a return down here somewhere. What does that mean? Well, we would say, well, that's bad because we got less than we expected. But again, statistically, it's bad because it's something other than the expected. It's something other than the mean of 9%. That means that's risk. This area, this shaded area under the mean line, those are called negative deviations. Note that the observations are all below the mean. Negative deviations. In statistics, if you had enough observations, if instead of having 3 months of information, you had 3 years or 30 years or whatever it is, if you had enough observations, all these deviations here would sum to 0. That's why in statistics course, you're going to learn about reversion to the mean. The reason they believe that is because they think all these deviations, all these areas of risk now, that they all sum to 0. And again, when we run through the statistics here in a little while, we're going to talk about deviations. And just as you look at this now, at any asset, The greater these areas of deviation, just visually, the greater the risk of the asset. But this is what we're going to be talking about in this example we're going to run through in a minute here. And again, we're going to talk about deviations and the deviations from the mean and all that sort of thing. And again, visually, I want you to understand what we're talking about now. We're talking about risk, and we're talking about the observations being something other than the mean. Anytime the observation is something other than the expected, other than the mean, statistically you have risk. And that's what we're going to be talking about here in future lectures.